Hello and welcome to the first episode of PlayFaeria.com's Deck Doctor. I'll be going through some of the top tier decks and what cards you need to build them, and of course the strategies that are involved in playing these decks. To start things off, we're going to be going with Mid-Range Red, a very popular deck on the ladder, and the deck I took from rank 5 to God rank this season. It's a very powerful deck with very few counters right now, and I definitely recommend it if you're trying to climb the ladder at the moment. So to kick things off, let's talk about the deck list itself. As you can see, it packs a lot of aggressive red creatures, and the whole game plan of this deck is to curve your land around the side of the board, collect Faeria, produce these strong aggressive bodies, and remove your opponent's threats, and then just go face and go for the win. And one of the great strategies of this deck is its removal and its creatures with great stat lines that can challenge a lot of the stuff your opponent's going to play. So really what you want to do is oppress your opponent, not allow them to gather Faeria, remove their creatures like I said, but you also have burst damage in Flame Burst, and Ground Shaker can even add up to some additional damage to finish off your opponent as well. So the key cards in this deck are cards like Axe Grinder, Fire Elemental, Shemdin Pest, and Outland Ranger, and Hate Seed. These are the cards that are going to be kind of the front line of your deck, and they are going to do all the fighting on board for you. And then you have your removal cards such as Flame Burst, the Firestorm, and the Cypher's Wrath, and that'll allow you to move threats off the board, along with Ground Shaker as well, but he doubles up as a body and as a piece of removal as well. And if things are not working out, or you just need that extra little bit of push, you also have that one copy of Firebringer to drop down on the board. So the deck's pretty simple, so let's go into other parts of the deck, such as the Mulligan. So the Mulligan is very simple with this deck. What you want are early creatures to be able to develop at the bottom end of the board and then start moving them along the side of the Faeria wells. These creatures will gather Faeria for you, but also their aggressive stat lines will allow you to contest anything your opponent plays. So I always recommend you mulligan for the Axe Grinder, the Fire Elemental, or the Outland Ranger to start things off. And the reason you go for these is, like I said, you're able to harvest Faeria early from your bottom well, and then they can start moving into a position where they can double collect on the right hand side. And I would pretty much throw everything away and search for these creatures individually. Other good things to keep, which I'd recommend, is maybe Ground Shaker if you know you're going up against, say, a green-yellow sack deck. Maybe some removal if you already have like an Outland Ranger and an Axe Grinder in hand, so maybe a Flame Burst or a Cypher's Wrath just to help you deal with one of your opponent's additional Faeria gatherers. But you really just want these three cards in your open hand, or at least one or two of them. And Fire Elemental is probably, well, I would actually say Fire Elemental and Outland Ranger are the two most important, because Outland Ranger allows you to develop neutrals to allow you to go quicker up the sides, but Fire Elemental also gives you additional lands, which also helps you accelerate. So you want to be able to accelerate your land as quickly as possible up the sides of those wells. And so let's take a look at the land placement and what direction you will be developing your land. As for land placement, you want to curve your land up the outside of the board. You can go either left or right, it doesn't really matter, unless you want to contest your opponent. You can also follow their path too. So if your opponent develops to the right, it's probably a good idea to develop to the right as well, because you have a lot of removal, and you have a lot of cheap creatures that can challenge their gatherers. So another thing to consider as well is where you want to put the mountains. Now these three mountain spots are very important, because not only do they act as aggressive mountains to allow you to develop threats closer to your opponent's orb, but they also buff the Axe Grinder. Now Axe Grinder is your cheapest creature in your deck, which has the most power. It develops into a 5/4 if you develop it on your opponent's well. And once you get these positions, this allows you to pump relentless amounts of creatures towards your opponent's orb and then finish them off. As far as matchups are concerned, this deck is really powerful, and there's not really a direct counter to it just yet. I would say Red Control could possibly counter it, or you just tech a mid-red to counter other players' mid-reds. But overall, this deck is really strong and one of the top tier decks in the metagame right now. Another deck that might be able to contest with it pretty well is Blue. Mono Blue is a very strong deck in its own right, and It can pretty much tackle any deck with the right cards in hand, but you should have a pretty easy time fighting against most colors. Green might give you a bit of trouble because a lot of the creatures have high health, but this deck is very fast, so green shouldn't be able to compete with you. So as far as matchups are concerned, I feel that mid-red doesn't really have any major lopsided matchups, so you should be able to fight the playing field very easily. And that's it for this episode of Deck Doctor. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe below and also share this video with other Faeria players you know who are getting into the game. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and of course YouTube. And of course go to playfaeria.com to find more videos and content for your Faeria needs. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you again next time.